Elena Voss stood at the back of the great hall, her hands folded tightly in front of her, and listened as the man she loved announced his marriage to another woman. The words came from Marcus Cade's mouth calmly, almost proudly, as if he were speaking about the weather instead of ending 3 years of quiet promises he had made to her in private. Priya Sandhu stood beside him, dressed in pale blue silk, her father the alpha of a powerful neighboring pack. The alliance made perfect sense to everyone in the room. It made no sense to Elena's heart. She did not cry. She had promised herself long ago that she would never let anyone see her break. Instead, she watched the pack council nod in approval, watched the elders smile at the union of 2 strong bloodlines, and watched Marcus avoid her eyes completely, as though she had already become a stranger to him. When the meeting ended, and the hall filled with congratulations, Elena slipped away unnoticed, her heart hammering with a grief she refused to show. That night, she returned to the small house near the training grounds where she had lived since her parents passed away, and she packed 1 bag. She did not take much: a few clothes, a photograph of her mother, and enough money to survive for a few weeks. She left the silver wolf pendant Marcus had given her 2 winters ago on the wooden desk by the window. It felt heavier than it should have, as though it carried the weight of every lie she had believed. Before the sun rose, Elena walked out of Thornwood territory for the last time. She did not look back at the tall pine trees or the stone walls that had been her whole world. She only walked forward, into the unknown, telling herself that whatever waited beyond the border could not hurt her more than staying ever would. What Elena did not know was that she was not alone on that road. Damien Ashworth had come to Thornwood that week for reasons that had nothing to do with weddings or politics. As the Alpha King who ruled over all the northern territories, he rarely left his own fortress, and when he did, it was always for matters of great importance. He had been meeting privately with Thornwood's council about a border dispute when he caught her scent drifting through the corridor outside the hall. It was faint, sad, and utterly unlike anything he had ever known. He told himself it meant nothing. Scents came and went, and he had smelled thousands of wolves in his long life. But that night, as he prepared to leave Thornwood before dawn, the same scent reached him again, stronger this time, carried on the cold morning wind. He followed it instinctively, the way a compass needle follows north without asking why. He found her at the edge of the forest, a lone figure with a single bag over her shoulder, walking away from everything she had ever known. She did not see him. She could not have known that the most powerful wolf in the northern lands stood watching her from the shadow of the trees, his chest tight with a recognition that startled him. In all his years, he had never felt the pull of a true mate bond. He had begun to believe it was not meant for him, yet here it was, undeniable, calling him toward a woman who did not even know his name. Damien did not approach her. He had seen the way she walked, shoulders squared but eyes hollow, and he understood, without needing to be told, that she had just survived something that had broken a part of her. To reveal himself now, to demand anything from her in that moment, felt wrong. So instead, he made a quiet decision. He would follow her, not as a king demanding attention, but as a silent guardian, until she was ready to know the truth. Elena traveled for 3 days before she reached a small town beyond the pack territories, a place where humans and wolves lived side by side without much notice of one another. She found a room above a bakery, paid for a week in advance, and began looking for work the very next morning. She was not the kind of woman who allowed herself to sit still with sadness. Movement, purpose, small daily tasks, these were the things that kept her from falling apart entirely. She found work at a modest veterinary clinic on the edge of town, run by an older woman named Grace, who asked no questions about her past and seemed grateful for an extra pair of capable hands. It was there that Elena met Sofia, a cheerful young woman who worked at the flower shop next door and had a habit of bringing coffee to the clinic every morning, whether anyone asked for it or not. Sofia knew nothing about packs or alphas or silver pendants left behind on wooden desks. To her, Elena was simply the quiet new girl with steady hands and tired eyes, and Sofia decided, within the first week, that she would be her friend whether Elena liked it or not. Slowly, painfully, Elena began to rebuild something that resembled a life. She learned the names of the animals that came through the clinic doors. She learned the rhythm of the town, the smell of fresh bread each morning, the sound of children playing in the square after school. She did not forget Marcus. She did not forget the humiliation of standing in that hall and hearing him choose someone else. But she found, day by day, that the pain no longer controlled every hour of her waking mind. What she did not know was that every night, when the town grew quiet and the shops closed their doors, a figure watched over her from the tree line at the edge of the fields. Damien had rented a small cabin outside of town, under a false name, close enough to reach her within moments if danger came, far enough that she would never notice him unless she looked very carefully. Twice, he had intervened without her knowledge. Once, he redirected a group of rogue wolves who had picked up her scent and mistaken her for an easy target, far from any pack's protection. Another time, he quietly paid off a landlord who had tried to raise her rent unfairly, making certain the man suddenly decided against it. Elena never learned of either event. She only knew that her small, hard-won life continued, undisturbed, and she was grateful for a peace she did not fully understand. It was on a cold evening, nearly a month after she had left Thornwood, that Elena finally noticed him. She had stayed late at the clinic to care for an injured dog, and by the time she began her walk home, the streets were empty and the air smelled of rain. Halfway across the town square, she felt it, the unmistakable sense of being watched. She had grown up around wolves her entire life. She knew the difference between imagination and instinct, and every instinct in her body told her that someone was there. She stopped walking and turned toward the shadows near the old stone fountain. "Whoever you are," she said, her voice steady despite the way her heart pounded, "you might as well come out. I know you are there." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a tall figure stepped into the dim light of the street lamp, and Elena found herself looking at a man unlike any she had ever seen. He was broad-shouldered and composed, with an aura of quiet authority that seemed to fill the entire square without him saying a single word. She did not need an introduction to recognize what he was. Every wolf in the north had heard stories of the reclusive Alpha King, though few had ever seen his face. "I did not mean to frighten you," Damien said, his voice low and calm. "My name is Damien Ashworth. I believe you already know who I am, even if we have never properly met." Elena's mind raced. "Why have you been following me?" He did not lie to her, not even to soften the shock of what he was about to say. "Because the night you left Thornwood, I caught your scent, and I recognized something I had never expected to find. You are my fated mate, Elena." For a moment, she simply stared at him, waiting for the words to make sense. When they finally did, something inside her hardened rather than softened. "I have heard beautiful words before," she said quietly. "I was told I was chosen too once. It meant nothing in the end." "I am not Marcus Cade," Damien said, and there was no anger in his voice, only a steady patience that surprised her. "I am not asking you to become anything tonight. I only wanted you to know the truth, because you deserved to know why a stranger has been watching over you from the trees for the past month, keeping you safe without your knowledge or your permission." Elena's chest tightened at the mention of the trees, at the sudden understanding that the quiet peace of her new life had never been entirely her own doing. Part of her wanted to be angry. Another part of her, the part she rarely allowed herself to listen to, felt something close to relief, that she had not been as alone as she believed. Over the following weeks, Damien did not disappear, but he also did not press her. He remained in the town openly now, taking a small room above the very bakery where she lived, and he made no demands of her time or her heart. Instead, he simply existed nearby, offering conversation when she wanted it, and distance when she did not. He told her about his 100 years as Alpha King, about the loneliness of ruling without a mate by his side, about how he had long ago stopped believing the bond was meant for him. He listened, in turn, as she spoke haltingly about Marcus, about the years she had spent believing she was building a future that was never truly hers. Slowly, cautiously, something shifted between them. Elena found herself looking forward to the moments when Damien appeared at the clinic door at the end of her shift, offering to walk her home not out of duty, but simply because he wanted to be near her. She noticed the way he treated Grace and Sophia with genuine respect, never once revealing his true position to impress or intimidate them. She noticed, too, the way he never once made her feel like a consolation prize, the way he seemed to value her opinions and her strength rather than merely her place beside him. Word of the Alpha King's growing attachment to a woman from Thornwood eventually reached the Pack Council back home. Realizing the political value of connecting themselves to the most powerful Alpha in the north, Thornwood's elders sent a formal message demanding Elena's return, claiming she remained bound to their territory by old Pack law. Marcus, perhaps regretting the choice he had made, added his own signature to the request. Damien received the message with quiet fury, though he did not act rashly. Instead, he traveled to Thornwood's border himself, standing before the very council that had once dismissed Elena as unworthy of their future Alpha. He did not threaten war, he did not raise his voice, he simply stated, with the calm authority that had earned him his crown, that Elena Voss was a free woman, bound to no pack against her will, and that any attempt to force her return would be answered directly by him. When he returned to the small town, he found Elena waiting for him outside the bakery, having heard through Sophia's endless network of gossip exactly where he had gone and why. She did not ask him to explain himself. She only looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for any trace of the manipulation she had once mistaken for love. She found none. "You did not have to do that," she said softly. "I wanted to," Damien answered. "Not because you belong to me, Elena, but because you deserve the choice that was never given to you before. Stay here, if that is what makes you happy, or come with me, not as anyone's second choice, but as my equal, if you decide that is what you want." Elena thought of the girl who had once stood silently in a crowded hall, swallowing her grief while the man she loved chose someone else. She thought of the woman she had slowly become in the quiet town, strong enough to rebuild her life from nothing. And she thought of the man standing before her now, who had followed her not to control her future, but to protect it, and who had never once asked her to be anything other than herself. She reached out and took his hand. "I choose you," she said, "because you let me choose." Together, they walked away from the bakery, away from the town that had given her shelter, and toward a future she had never expected to find, one built not on politics or old promises, but on a love that had waited patiently, in the shadows, until she was finally ready to see it.